Is head down and relaxed better, or are aerodynamics improved when my head is upright and the helmet is more horizontal with the ground? This is definitely one to be answered by an aerodynamicist, right? But I think it's something that we can talk to, and especially Chad, you and I, we noticed how much head position mattered when we were in the wind tunnel.
Yeah, and you can just, learn through observation and watch. What just happened? World Road Championships, and look at the best time trialists. And these guys are already so dialed in terms of their fit, but I can't count how many times I saw riders who are extremely aerodynamic already drop their head down and basically almost set their forehead on their bar extensions, which is risky. I'm not advocating it, but they recognize the benefit of that slightly, just that little bump of a helmet onto the hump in their back and dropping that down, and the difference it makes over the course of, in that case, a really long time trial. Yeah,
that's why you'll see, especially I think head forward people, and depending on your posture, depending on how you're built. Like you may be a more head up looking forward person. I'm not saying up as in just purely upright, but more looking forward rather than like a head down. And actually we'll have producer Ian put these in here, but Jonathan Castroviejo, he rides for Team Sky, and that guy has a balled up position on the bike, but he looks incredibly aerodynamic, and he has more of a head down position, but it's very aero. And what I mean head down, I mean like rotated forward and down.
His head's like Chad said, his forehead's touching his Garmin.
It would be very hard to see forward.
That helmet's rolled as far back on his head as he can get it, and he is just barely catching the horizon with his eyes.
Yeah, so he doesn't use the Giro Arrowhead, and I say that helmet because it's got a very unique design to it. I believe that they use something from Kask, and it's a form of the Bambino. It may not even be a normal one, but he has the Bambino, which is kind of similar to like even the POC that I have, the Cerebel, that sort of thing.
With a snub tail.
Yeah, with a snub tail like that. And if you have that position, you kind of want to match the helmet that works with that. But you look at somebody like Rowan Dennis using the Giro Arrowhead, he has a much more head looking forward position instead of looking down, and it works for him. The biggest thing, and I think that the answer that an aerodynamicist would give you, is that it depends on how you hold your body. And
limb length and obviously flexibility, being able to create power in a really closed position. There's certainly more factors to it than head position. But
what do you do, Pete?
I'm a head down, but
are we talking about time trials or sprints here?
Well, let's talk about time trials.
I think they're different. Oh well, So for a time trial, I like to ride. So I never do time trials. Thank goodness.
For the one time trial,
I think you did one last year. Two actually.
Two. Yeah. One was the Merckx TT though, which was way better.
Yeah.
that's just a breakaway. That's not a TT.
But I'm a head canted forward rider. My head's always down a little bit. I never just look straight ahead.
Right.
And so when my forearms are on the tops of my handlebars, I drop everything. But I'm a wide guy, so my head sort of gets swallowed by my shoulders and back and stuff. But I put more power out in that kind of super aggressive forward position. So that's where my body likes to be anyways. But I'm working on that shrug for me is the biggest thing. If I can shrug my shoulders a little bit and get my head just embedded in my body a little more.
Just a tiny bit.
And it's barely anything. But it's a conscious effort. That's a big, you can notice a quarter mile an hour, a half mile an hour, something crazy for no extra effort other than scrunching your shoulders.
That's it. That's all it takes. Yeah. What about sprinting? I think the biggest thing with TTs, you can spot, right? And what I mean by spotting is keeping your eyes down, looking up, eyes down, looking up, that sort of thing to help facilitate that position. When you're sprinting, you should not be, you should be looking where you need to be. It's pretty scary.
Always. Yeah.
Otherwise, you can really get
no exceptions in a sprint.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's a solo sprint off the front, but a mass sprint.
Yeah.
And even sprinting, you just got to have your eyes up.
Yeah. So what do you do with your head when you sprint?
Well, I'm a sighter while I sprint because I put more power out. So I think one of the things to remember is with sprinting, you connect your handlebars through your upper body, right, to make that perfect base for sprinting. And so it feels much easier to get a good solid connection when your head's down at looking at your stem. So I definitely start my sprint, you look and make sure hopefully for the next half a second nothing's in front of you. And start your sprint and wind up, and then as bad as it is, I sight, and then you can see if anybody's next to you or behind you or whatever, and how hard you need to go. So a lot of sprints are either as hard as you can possibly go, or kind of you just have to beat someone, right? So starting your sprint looking down, I think, is important, just because that's where the power comes from. But then once you're not going you can only go all out for those first couple seconds anyways, and then the rest is kind of that taper as you're coming off the power. So then you can pay attention a bit more. But I do think, I'm not going to recommend this, but if you find a powerful position wherever your head may be, you'll find you get a better few seconds of a kick on the beginning of your sprint.
Yep.
Sure. And I think I'd like to actually agree with you, but as a coach, I just can't advocate it. So what works best and what's safest are very different things in this case.
Yeah, because I do the same thing as Pete. I did it yesterday when I was sprinting, and I paid attention to it.
I think I'd probably do it too, because I'm usually glancing at my power meter to see what that first little 1 second generates.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which never fall into that trap, because you're not going to see it. Like, it always averages, and then, you miss it through. But
unless you have your peak power displayed, which...
I got it, yeah. Chad has peak power.
Chad just has a screen of maxes.
Yeah, just maxes. Little sticker that says you're beautiful below it. Yeah, exactly.
Little mirror.
Yeah, like with sprinting, I feel like when I'm looking, the biggest problem that I have with sprinting is that I get too high. And I think that's a big... first, for beginners, I think hopping the back wheel is a big problem. And then I think being too high. And I've found side-by-side sprinting with some pretty fast riders in practice and not. We've mentioned him before, but he's a friend of the podcast and friend of TrainerRoad, but Scott Waters, he's got a really big sprint on him. And I've noticed that the only way that I could ever compete with that is if I I need to manage to keep my power where it was, but somehow manage to stay lower. And you look at somebody like, Caleb Ewan's an extreme example of this, but Cav is a good example of this, stays completely flat backed and low and is
really low.
He has this ability to kind of like crane his head perfectly forward, like perpendicular, Yeah. Kittle is the same way, right? He has a head that's just like looking straight ahead the whole time. Perhaps they've trained that, but the big thing is you'll see with those guys, Kittle perhaps not so much, but they really focus on getting low, staying low with their body. And
it's a tricky balance to find too, because for a very short while, pretty much once, I tried that very forward, very low position, and I did exactly what you just described, which I hopped my rear wheel.
Yeah.
And that is a disconcerting occurrence. When that wheel jumps over to the side and all your weight's forward, that's a terrifying thing. So right there, I recognize that's obviously too far forward.
Yep.
So then I basically dialed it back from there. Ideally, you'd probably ease into something rather than jump to the furthest extreme. But, I made the mistake one time. Fortunately, it didn't cost me.
Yeah.
And I remedied it.
I think one thing is practice your sprints, right?
So
like you
much.
can fine tune it even yourself. You can try like a head low, a head medium, and a head high, or a body low, body medium, body high. And if you look at your power, see what it feels like, and just do 100-meter sprints or 200-meter sprints on something very closed. Like at our local crit course,
safe.
There's no one driving around there, so you can just where 200 meters to go is, and it's a loop. So every 2 minutes you can do a sprint if you want.
Yeah.
But you get way better at sprinting by practicing, and there's never a time where it doesn't help you. Always, eventually, a sprint will come down, and the better you are at it, the more confident you are. You're like, well, I've done hundreds of sprints this year. You're going to be so much better going into it, and you'll know that you're going to do low, medium, or high, or arms out, or arms in, or whatever. But practice, it's definitely
this
one of those
coming
things.
from a criterium rider too. So someone where you are guaranteed to rely on that sprint at some point in time.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say it's also just good for you, right? As an athlete, as a person. When you actually do a 10-second all-out sprint.
Those maximal efforts go a long ways towards furthering all types of fitness.
Yep. And it's always interesting to me to see a rider that looks, he looks like, Tom Bonin, just perfectly smooth pedaling stroke. And then when they sprint, it's like, whoa, what happened? Like different rider, like it does not look clean, doesn't look stable. It can be a dangerous thing to go all out. And if you ride a mountain bike, especially, or a cross, that you can't have really sloppy technique when you're trying to sprint because you don't have perfect traction. So big advocate for it. I think that it makes you more familiar with your limits on the bike, which can be helpful in plenty of different scenarios. So
yeah, if you're a mass start racer, you have to train your sprint at some point. I mean, the multi-sport athletes, time trialists, no point. I mean, I won't say there's no point in it, but you're probably not going to have to employ it during an event.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone else, you got to work on it.
Yep. Hey, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Pete.
And if you like this video, you should subscribe to our channel. There's a lot more where that came from. And you can give us a thumbs up on this video down below.
If there was something you didn't like, give us a thumbs down and tell us what we could do better in the comments below.
If you want to get answers to your coaching questions, you can check out the videos over here.
And if you want to see more race analysis videos, check them out right here.
And if you want to become a faster cyclist, you should head over to TrainerRoad.com. It works. It's how Pete's so fast.
Well, sort of fast.